Hello and welcome to the Red Report, Season 9 of Barnsley FC's longest-running podcast. Proud to be part of the TalkSport network of fans. As always, joining us is Red Report Ian. Ian, how are you?
Very well. How are you, chaps?
Not too bad. Also joining him from his bedroom floor, we'll talk about that later on, is Steve. Yeah, sounds working, Steve. Well done.
Still here, mate. Still here, still kicking. Managed to drag myself off my deathbed.
And also joining us, you'll know his voice. Those of you that volunteer for the Barnsley Hospital broadcasting will know him. He's been going to Oakwell. Phil, I don't want to get it wrong, but it's a lot of years, isn't it? You've been going to that place.
Yeah, just a few. About 55, I reckon.
About 55 years he's been going to Oakwell. In various roles, I presume, radio commentary, hospital. You're now doing I Follow. Phil Hall is joining us this evening. Phil, how are you?
Pretty good, thank you. Just trying to get warm after a freezing cold night at Blackpool the other night.
But you know what? And we might as well start about that because, in fairness, I thought the first half, I thought we did all right. I thought, nothing special. Never easy Tuesday night call under the lights, but I thought we did. The second half didn't really warm me up, Phil. What were your thoughts? You were there for I Follow. What was your summary on that 90-minute performance?
It was a classic game of two halves, wasn't it? I mean, I thought first half we played well. We played it about well. We created a couple of good chances. I mean, McAtee could have had a hat-trick on another day. And we played some decent stuff. I thought, generally we looked pretty good. Callum Starr was a bit off the plot for me, but the rest of the guys had a pretty good game, I thought, and we looked fairly sound at the back. They did play long balls over the top, which threatened to catch us out, and they were quite quick on the break, but we coped with it first half. And then, of course, John McAtee went off with the injury at half time, and that shouldn't change things to that extent, but it did. I mean, whether that was the reasoning behind it, I don't know, but that's what happened, and Blackpool were far the better side in the second half and deserved the win in the end.
Yeah. And Ian, it's ironic, isn't it? When people, I'm not in the habit of criticising or pointing out players whose fault it was, but it's very unfortunate, isn't it, that Lopata comes back. That's your role, Steve, I know.
Thanks very much.
We looked, as Phil said, we looked pretty solid at the back. I was happy that Lopata was back. Our French number 6 that I still can't pronounce was playing really well as well. Then Lopata comes off, Williams comes on, and within 2 minutes, and that's not. But we talked about the high balls. That's one thing that is far more difficult for Jordan Williams because of his stature. Kill a ball and it's Blackpool. How would you sum the whole 90 minutes up then, Ian?
Similar to what Phil says, really. I mean, pre-match, a mate at work's a Blackpool season ticket holder, and I congratulated him on the victory before we'd even kicked off. Because I didn't fancy us at all. But I saw the team sheet, and it was a really strong side. I mean, given the fact that they didn't play at the weekend, and they started off full of energy. But that was Blackpool's reserves. My mate said that is not our full strength team, and that was Barnsley's full strength team. So it's quite poor in the end to whimper out really at the end. First half, really open game. Created loads of chances. The subs just didn't work at all. Granted, when that cross came in, the striker was probably a foot taller than Williams. But come on, you've got to at least jump for the bloody header. Last year, those players were busting a gut in that red shirt, and this season they're not at all. And he never even jumped for that header, which was a bit disappointing. Which summed up the second half performance really for me.
Steve, a lot of them say that there were quite a few changes in the Blackpool team on social media. They called it almost like the Blackpool reserves. Is it worrying then that when you look at the stats after the match, we had 11 shots on goal, they had 12. We had 6 on target, they had 7. 4 off target each. Total passes were very similar. We both had 2 clear-cut chances. We had a couple of corners more. Both had a blocked shot. Both had tackles won the same. Percentage possession 51-49. It seems very even when you looked at stats. Is that worrying then, do you think, that what we called a pretty strong Barnsley side struggle against a team like Blackpool, especially giving our good away form this season?
Same result, isn't it? Stats can confuse you. They can help you. They can cover up things that should be covered up and cover up things that shouldn't be covered up. I mean, there's something I've seen on Twitter today that said Neil Collins, his first whatever games in charge, he's got a 48% win rate, and we're 8th in league, 7th in league, and this, that, and other. And that stat you would think is really, really good until you've actually watched any of the games over the last few weeks that we've played. You wouldn't then class it as good performances, or what the stats are telling you. If I was Neil Collins, luckily I'm not, looking at his face on Monday night in that fans forum, because I thought somebody had kicked him in doodahs and he'd just sat there all night because he looked absolutely pissed off. I would be very, very worried, not just about the state of the team. I'd be worried about the state of my own job. I've been a big supporter of Collins all the way through. I thought he's deserved a chance. I thought he'd be coming in with fresh ideas. From his time in Tampa, he did really well with them. But for me, that second half against Blackpool summed up what seems to have become with us. Players don't seem to want to play for him. He's either not very good in dressing room, or they just don't rate him, respect him. Tactics, I don't see any tactics. When he's making substitutions, 9 times out of 10, it's like for like. He doesn't change anything. He doesn't change shape. He doesn't seem capable of changing shape. We seem to always be trying to stick to this back 3, back 5. You get them pushing on. I mean, both goals for Blackpool in that second half, the guy's gone through and scored on both. And if you watch the replays, it takes something like 2 or 3 seconds and you see Cadden trotting back down wing. So where's Cadden been when we're supposed to be defending these attacking opportunities for Blackpool? Cadden's been nowhere, and I'm not slagging Cadden off. If he's been told to push forward, all well and good. But isn't he supposed to be a wing back? Aren't they supposed to defend as well? So it's stuff like that. You look at a Blackpool side that are not full of names or full of, famous players, however you want to put it. And it's our best, near enough best 11. And you come up with a second half that lacks absolutely everything. And when I say everything, to me now, our midfield must be worst midfield in First Division. Kane, Styles and Phillips, for me, won't get another shirt this season because I think they're an absolute disgrace because they put nothing towards that side.
Phil, you've been going to Oakwell a long time. I can remember, even just in the last 5 years, that ignore Asbaghi and Shop because they were errors. We always had an identity. Under Ismail, you knew exactly how Barnsley would play. Very much, that high press. It started under Daniel Stendhal, that Gegenpress style. Even under Michael Duff, most of the performance, that started gelling sort of November time when he went that season unbeaten, and it was that upwards trajectory, wasn't it? Is it fair to say that we're still looking at what identity? I just done a podcast with Reading, and they asked about our identity, and I found it really hard to say, well, in possession it's like a 3-5-2, out of possession like a 5, but is it fair to say that he's probably still looking for his best 11 and for an identity and a style of play, because it seems very mixed and very uncertain still, although we're in December and nearly halfway in the season?
I think you're right there. I think he's still trying to find the best permutations, if you like. I've got a lot of sympathy with him because, bear in mind, he came in, he's flown across the Atlantic, rooted his family and everything. He's made a real commitment, and you look at what happened with the players that were sold, from under his feet pre-season. He virtually lost the defence, and that takes an awful lot of doing. And I think being a central defender himself in his playing days, his main concern initially was to bottle up that defence. I wouldn't say it's worked, but that's what he's trying to do. That's why we're playing tippy-tappy sideways football rather than the high press. I don't think we can afford to play high press at the moment because we'd leave too many gaps at the back. I'd love to get back to it, but I think he's still finding his feet there. And for me, you've got to give him more time.
Yeah. And Ian, it's fair to say, isn't it? Whenever we talk about opposition podcast, I always tell them, and I mean, I might be completely wrong because I tend to be anyway, but the defence is probably I'm worried about least. I'm always thinking who's going to partner Cole because we're not a one-man team. Who's going to play? And the midfield. When is the midfield started? Actually, the defence, like again, our French number 6, really well in it, decent player. Casper Lapata when he's back, I think he
looked well. He looked well Tuesday night. Lapata to say it was his first game back. He looked back to himself.
I tipped him just to let you know for player of the season before the ball was kicked. Because from what I've seen and from what I've heard, I'm not so worried about the defence. Ian, is it fair to say that my worry is the midfield has not really changed? Phillips was there last season. Kane was there last season. Connell, you can forgive. He had a nasty illness and he's on his way back. And again, we're not on my team. Adam Phillips, which I know Steve will come into in a minute, he scored goals last season outside the area. He was a danger. He was like a third striker at times or a fourth, depending on how, Herbie Kane last season, we put heaps of praise on because, we'd said, and we'd all sort of agreed that he had a fantastic season at Donny. He comes here, didn't really work, went out to Oxford, came back last season, immense. I thought he contributed. He was not saying captain's material, but he did really well. He's gone downhill again a bit. What is it with the midfield? And then we'll start talking about the press conference today. Because is that, you think, something that's maybe stopping that extra 5-10% on the match day? Because if you just want to explain for anybody who's not seen it, the press conference today with Herbie Kane.
Well, getting to your original point, I have a certain amount of sympathy for Collins. I agree with Steve. There are sometimes a lot of time there's no plan B, but his best players were sold in the summer to Championship or Premier League clubs, and we signed players. Although some have been a success, like Lapata and the Frenchman who I can never pronounce, and now like Jack Shepherd as well at the back. But defensively, you can't play Williams as a centre half. It's failed miserably. He's a wing back, and he's got to stop persisting with that. But defensively, like I say, I'd like to see Shepherd in there as well. But the midfield has gone from being the best midfield in League One to probably the worst midfield, and it's the same personnel. And I personally think the likes of Kane, Spatty's done me out a little bit. He's seen the likes of Kitchen get a big money deal to Coventry. Bobby Thomas has gone there. He's seen plenty of players go to Luton, and are in the Prem. And I think he probably wants a bit of that. Jordan Williams alluded to the same when he had that interview at the start of the season where he'd like to play as high as he can, that included the Premier League, to which we all probably fell around laughing. And I think some of them have probably are playing like they've got a bit of a slap backside. So the sympathy for Collins is the fact that a lot of these players, I mean, Callum Styles is going to the Euros in the summer, and he had a shocking game on Tuesday. And let's face it, he has one good game every 3 or 4. It's no wonder Millwall didn't sign him permanently. Nobody's going to pay £2 million for a player who plays once every 4 or 5 games and then puts in a bang average performance in League One. So the midfield is a massive problem. Going forward as well, Waters is off the boil. I'm not seeing enough of Cosgrove to justify his inclusion, and we still are struggling to find a permanent partner for Cole. So, but yeah, going on to then Herbie Kane interview, I have seen a few interviews with him, and he isn't the most talkative, and I'm sure Adam Oxley, it must have been like pulling teeth trying to question him in this recent one, and I felt a little bit for Adam, because they were one-word answers on some of them. But the two telling questions for me were, and he's done this before when he's talked about his contract, he shuts right up. He's clearly not happy about this contract. Either he wants to leave or the club are dragging the feet. And it was absolutely damning how he never even barely spoke a word about Luke O'Connell, yet talked all day about Callum Styles and Russell. So he's clearly, they clearly don't get on. You could tell that from the interview.
Yeah. Is it fair to say then, Steve, and I agree with Phil, and I think we Collins, it's easy for a manager to take a job and live in the same house. He had to cut. He chose to do that. So there's no denying the dedication and what he did on his part to come to Barnsley. Are we? Is the management behind the scenes then? Because clearly, if that's what's going off, that's why you need your manager to come in, don't you? And either put an arm around one, or a foot up the arse of the other. Because everybody is motivated differently to try and get. Because at times, and we've said it before, is that lack of identity because it's not really, it's 11 individuals sometimes that are playing rather than a team altogether. Because the only team performance was probably, we've had a few, but when you start the season 7-0 at home, announced promotion. Steve was booking the Premier Inn at Wembley because he thought that's it.
I've got to cancel that. Remind me to cancel that.
I'll ring you later. But is it fair to say that that's an extra job that maybe Collins has had to do that maybe Michael Duff didn't have to worry about last season?
First and foremost, managers have got to have the sense to know what sort of players they've got. And I'm sure he does. He'll put his arm around some. He'll tell others off. Personally, I'd be putting my hand around Kane's throat after what he said. If he plays Saturday, there's something wrong. I really believe that if he plays Saturday, we might as well all pack up. And that's what I said on Twitter, because to come out with the comments he came out with and the vagity, I don't know if vagity is a word. Have I just made that up?
It's a good one.
Really,
I'm just noting it now for Scrabble.
Note it down. At times I found it embarrassing because it came across, and I hate to say it, as I am going to do, as I always do, it came across thick. It was just, have you been able to sort your contract out? No. Luke O'Connell's a really good player, isn't he? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I just thought, is that it? You listen to some players, younger players, that are quite enthused, and when you're doing a press conference for your club, you show that excitement. And he just sat looking down camera lens as though he were talking to you, to be quite honest, Carlo. You know what I mean? So it just sorry, mate. So I found that really, really disappointing, to be honest. And as for Collins and his, like you say, the defensive problems do stem from Williams, but not just from him. You've got Barry Cotter and O'Keefe on that right-hand side that neither of them can buy a decent performance or a decent 90 minutes, because although Cotter were going forward on Tuesday night, he lost ball more times. And for me, he didn't chase back. He stood looking at referee or linesman with his hands up as though it's a foul. And most of them weren't even fouls. He just lost ball. And it's that drive and passion that we are just not seeing at minute. I watched Aston Villa Man City last night, and really good game of football. And everybody, I'm sure, before kick-off would have said, yeah, Man City on fire. They'll go down there, draw minimum, or they'll win quite easily. Aston Villa showed passion. They want to a single man. They wanted that ball. They wanted to play. They wanted to push forward. Like Phil said earlier on, this tippy-tappy sideways football. We haven't got Edison in net. We haven't got Stones and Diaz stood at back, being able to wait till last split second to play that killer ball. Not that we've got anybody to play that killer ball to. But why persist with a style that our players cannot play? And they can't play tippy-tappy football. I get he wants to get the defence sorted, and it needs sorting. But does that mean going back to basics and going back to a back four rather than persisting with the wing backs, which at the minute just doesn't seem to be working? And just on that point that Ian said about Watters not being very good at minute and Cosgrove, etc., just because Cole scored as many goals as he did first few games, he's done absolutely bugger all for the last 4 or 5 games. So he's going nowhere in January because people will have seen him for what he is, which is an average League One striker, if that. Sorry, I've been damning again, haven't I?
No. Listen, it's fine.
Even a bang average striker needs good service, and he ain't getting that.
Exactly. Ian, Carlo, back me up. What have I said all the way through?
Well,
Woodrow had same. Morris had same. people were slagging Woodrow off left, right, and centre. He's here, he's there, he's never in the right place, blah, 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 because he never got service from midfield.
No,
And
Woodrow
this
came
has
to the
always been
halfway
one.
line to collect the ball and then nowhere
He
to
had
go.
to do.
Yeah.
That's it. He had to do.
You touched on Phillips. Last season, we scored the most goals from outside the area in the league than anybody else. We were shooting at every opportunity. We were bombarding the opposition. Phillips is a shadow. He's another one, a shadow of the player, and I just don't think he suits this system. I think there's probably other elements as well. He's off confidence, off form, but I think these players suited that style of play that we've been playing for the last couple of years, and they just don't suit this tippy-tappy football.
A lot of, well, we've mentioned some bits. Before the Blackpool match, the forum, which we alluded to. So since the last time we recorded, we know that the CEO was leaving at the end of the season. That's now been brought forward to next week. A director of football, which we've said is coming in. Questions were asked. Again, it was open to everybody. And Julian Key was there. Narif was there, CEO. Neil Collins was there as well. I don't know if you watched it. I watched it on because it was live on YouTube as well, and you could send questions in before. Callum hosted it, and that's not an easy job to do because everybody was sort of like, this is wrong and that's wrong. It sort of felt that, which you always get, don't you? I mean, you have those people that talked very much about the Middlesbrough keeper that's out injured and will win the league if he plays. And that's lovely. That's a lovely view. I don't know if that's the view for the fans forum. I think, did it meet the reason why it was held in the first place, do you think? Are fans any of the wiser? And I tell you what I mean with that. Reading, that I just spoke to on their podcast, I mentioned Fanatics, and he said, oh, shocking. He says, Reading fans had to wait 5 weeks for the shirts this season that were ordered. They still gave me a championship badge on. He says that firm is just absolutely shocking. So, again, there's feedback there. The Fanatics were mentioned, the FA Cup was mentioned, everything else. Do you feel any the wiser, or was it an exercise for fans to get off the chest how they felt so we could start again and start, supporting the team?
I think the idea in principle is a good idea. I just think these two now, I think if they held another one, most people wouldn't even tune in. I just don't think they've got, I just don't know, it just doesn't seem to have the impact that you wanted it to have, some proper insight that the club give you a great opportunity to kind of say, right, this is where we're going. And it's just, I don't know, most fans just don't believe what the board are saying, do they? Because too many times they've built up big plans and nothing's come to fruition. And I think it feels like the intention is good. And it could be a great opportunity. It just feels a bit watered down now. It feels like it's lacking any weight behind it at all. I just don't think the last one, the one before was a farce. Some of the questions that were asked, and this one just, I don't know. I can see him fizzling out.
It's hard, isn't it, Phil? Because in a way, the board can't win. Because the owners come out, free event, come and ask us questions. So they're very reliant on the people that come to ask those questions. Other teams don't do it. I mean, you could be a Sheffield Wednesday fan. Don't forget their season tickets for next season go on sale on Friday. So they have the communication. They have the open forums. Julian Key said, I'm more than happy to communicate on social media with any fan if we keep it respectable. You look at clubs around this region, they don't. So Barnsley fans have the input, don't we? We have the opportunity to vent, ask questions. That needs to be applauded as well, doesn't it? Because other clubs, you can't get nowhere near. I mean, in your time supporting Barnsley, it's quite a new thing, isn't it? That it's been happening for 6-7 years, I think, hasn't it? Ben Mansford started it, and then it's sort of it's a good thing, isn't it? But is it reaching its full potential, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good idea, and the basis is good, but as you say, it's not quite hitting its full potential. And I'm not sure why that is, but what I found the other night was the board were very, very defensive and not really answering many questions. Nero was quite impressive. I've seen he seemed okay, but Julianne just wouldn't give a straight answer to a question. She was throwing everything back at the audience every time. Typical politician speak. And for me, that didn't work. If you're going to have that kind of forum, I applaud the fact they're having it. If you're going to have it, it's got to be a two-way thing, and you've got to have answers to questions.
Yeah. Steve, did you have any questions? Did you send any questions in?
Why even think that I would?
No. We got, and I'll send it in the WhatsApp group in a bit. We got a private message, people saying, you're very outspoken about this. Why weren't you there? And my answer was, I didn't need to be there. I think when the Elderslie Reds are travelling, they'll have conversations on the bus, or the Hoyland Reds, or the East Dean Reds, or whatever. I don't think you have to be a happy clapper to agree. I mean, people agree and people are happy with things, then that's absolutely fine. We use this outlet as 4 blokes of a certain age. So we say, just sit here and talk about what we like, what we don't like, and you know what I mean? And this is not, we don't use it. It's not a public shame, because we go to matches, we volunteer at matches. Ian travels from the other side of the Pennines to come to matches. So I don't think our passion for the club can ever be questioned with what we do. But I've always just thought it'd be really refreshing if somebody stood up saying Fanatics was a mistake. We are tied to a 3-year contract. We're going to try and make the best of it, but it's something that we look really close to, close at by the time that's up. Because if this is not working, we might need to look at something else. FA Cup, well, it happened before, but then there were protocols in place. But clearly, but there were fans that went, travelled a long time, took days of work to go. And you just said it a bit like a politician. It's, if you're not going to bat straight back, because every question was received back with a question, I think people go and say, I got that off my chest. Well, how do you feel now? Well, I don't know, because I didn't really get an answer. It's difficult, isn't it?
Well, that's what you get with these sort of people. She's not got where she is today as PR guru, whatever, living in America, etc., and can afford to fly over every now and again during the year to watch matches and take part in this lot. She hasn't got there by giving you a straight answer. A lot of these business people, that's how they work, that's how they operate. And no, I didn't watch it on Monday. No, I didn't have a question, especially after the last one, which were, like you say, were an absolute farce. But obviously, I've heard quite a bit of what went off, what was said, and no, I don't feel any more enthused into club, into board, that they're going to do a better job moving forward now that Khalid's gone. They're going to have this guy coming in as CEO. He's been chief finance officer or something like that. I think I read somewhere that was part of one of his roles, as well as being in charge at academy. No, okay, then fair enough. I've also read somewhere that they're on about Bobby Hassel being director of football.
Interim
director. All right, fair enough.
Because they might not appoint anybody before the January transfer window, so they need. And I think, to be fair, I mean, and again, it's all about opinions. If you look at the people at the club, he is Barnsley through and through. He's got a good footballing idea.
Is that not the problem? Is that not the problem?
Well, yeah.
And like you said, it is all about opinions. We all have different opinions. Neil Collins has come in from America. He's played in England, so he's got an idea of English football, but he's not been over here for a while. So we kept Martin Devaney as that bridge,
link
you want, between managers and players. Now, we said earlier on about, is he not doing right things in dressing room? Is he not getting across to players? Blah, blah. Devaney's still there. And everybody keeps singing Devaney's praises and how he gets on with players. So why ain't he stepping in some way and getting Kane round back and saying, now then, I need to pull his socks up because you're making us look like idiots. That bridge is supposedly there. But nothing's said about that.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because at the beginning of the season...
It's very, very difficult. But
I know. At the beginning of the season, I remember on here saying, I think it's like a dream team almost, isn't it? Collins, his career was at the back. Devaney was a midfield, and
John Stead.
John Stead was a striker. That you've got it all, haven't you? Like he's got the experience, and clearly. Coming then, Steve, from the fans forum, they are putting together I need to get it right, a fan advisory group, an FAG, and they are looking for people from different age ranges, different genders, disabled fans, season ticket holders, non-season ticket holders, people that go away, people that go home, groups of fans, international overseas fans, blah, 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 to get together once a month at Oakwell to talk to the CEO, and they'll have different themes every month. So other senior members of the club will be there. Great. Is the problem not? Is that what is it going to resolve though? Because these
right. First off, the thing that we all laughed about. Why call it that? Because straight away, it's ridicule, isn't it? Why call it fag? I'm not being funny now. You're trying to get a club back up on its feet. You're trying to get supporters involved, and yet again, we're laughing. We're becoming yet again a laughing stock. Why come up with that? Call it whatever you want, but for Christ's sake, look at what it's going to make. So that's my first point, which I think is madness. However, the actual idea behind it, if people want more involvement and the board allow it to be involved and take on board what they say, then surely it should be a good thing. But again, you're back to, are they going to listen to what people say, or is it just an exercise to keep certain people happy?
I think the question I have, and it's not like the question I have is 8-9 years ago, they brought out SLOs, supporter liaison. We got an email address that belonged to the club. We had social media accounts. If you had a question that you wanted to ask the club, but you couldn't email, you could ask the SLO. 2 were home SLOs, 2 were away SLOs. So the away SLOs will always travel to away matches as well. And they would have regular meetings. I did that for a while. I met with Ben Mansford every 3-4 weeks. And he was really involved in that. And, we don't hear much of SLOs at the moment. It just seems it's like a different version again. It works if changes are made and people are listened to. I think the biggest thing I got from the forum, but lots of people want safe standing. And let's be honest, they call it troublesome because they stand up in that top corner, but they're the ones that if there's an atmosphere at Oakwell, they're the ones that start it. They're looking at maybe, somebody commented about a standing section in between the West Stand and the Ponty End. They don't want to make that investment because of the lease that needs sorting out. Now, the big news that comes when they'll say, which we all think something to do with the lease, absolutely great. But then they need Spectre agenda in it. Then it needs to be, well, you've said the lease needs to be sorted. The lease is now sorted when this big news comes out. Fans will want then say, well, you said it'd be looked at. Something will then need to be done. Because you can meet. But if you don't make any changes or nothing is being put in place, then you might as well talk to the wall or to my wife because you'll not get a response there, will you? Is that fair to say, Ian? Like, if you're going to...
He doesn't know your wife, does he?
Oh, he's always ringing her. He's always ringing. But isn't that right? Actions speak louder than words. Judge us on our actions. Then if you're going to set this up...
It is. It's you don't want it paying lip service, do you? It's got to build that bond between the fans and the club, and get everybody on board and pull in the same direction. That's the idea. What you don't want it to do is just pay lip service to it, and it just a bit like the forum. It'll end up getting watered down, and it'll just fizzle out. So it's got to be driven on both sides, but it's got to mean something, has it? They've got to get something out of it. It can't just set it up and big headlines and then it fizzles out in 12 months.
Just to round off before we do a forecast for the Reading match, Christmas is just around the corner, a couple of weeks. That means it's halfway in the season as well. Boxing Day we play Port Vale. That was the season opener, obviously earlier this year. Where did you think we were going to finish this season? And have you adjusted that given the first half is now over? So I said between 8 and 12, and I'll stick with that. I don't think we're going to playoffs. I'm hoping we will, and I'm hoping January will be as meaningful as it was last year. with some key players coming in that projection is further up. But I do think top 10, but not top 6. Ian?
Yeah, I've adjusted mid-table mediocrity for me this season.
All right, Steve?
What did I say? Had I been drinking? I think I had, hadn't I? Because didn't I say something stupid like we'd definitely go up?
Yeah.
I thought I had. I'd definitely been drinking, hadn't I must have been drinking now because I could have sworn I just heard you say these new players that's coming in and we're going to go like this. What makes you think anybody's going to come in January? Because I don't think they'll spend any money. But anyway, that's a conversation for. I don't mean preempting another show, do I? We need to get another show after this.
But so what you're saying now? Definitely going up top 6.
Yeah, I don't miss a daft way that we're playing at minute, unless they can get hold of it and turn a corner, and it's a really, really big corner now for me. Mid-table, but yeah, I don't think we'll struggle to stay up. I really hope not, God, but it needs to get hold of it. But yeah, at minute, I'd be happy with 15th, 16th, to be honest.
Phil, you've seen many seasons at Oakwell, and it's not that long ago when Paul Heckingbottom was in charge. Well, Lee Johnson initially, where we started off dreadfully, and then
Heckingbottom's looking for a job.
Well, yeah.
Duffy's and all, apparently.
We're not out of it, are we, Phil? We're not out of it, but big changes, or there needs to be a real upturn in results and performances to repeat what we did last season and get to Wembley.
There does, but we saw it last season. We're still better off now than we were last season, in theory, in terms of statistics, points, goals scored, you name it. So if we turn that corner again, I'm not saying we will. I'm hopeful we will, obviously, but give the guy time to get it together, and I'm sure we can do something. I said we'd finish top 6. I still think we will.
And before the middle of the season, the small matter of an away trip to Reading on Saturday. Now, Reading, second from bottom, they got a 3-point deduction, didn't they, earlier in the season? They're definitely not firing on all cylinders. Similar situation to us, as in fans a bit still working out the manager and whether it's going well or not well or whatever. I think that's always easier when you sit 7th in the table than second from bottom, of course. Shall we just come up combined with who we think should take to the field on Saturday? And then Ian will set us off with a score forecast. So in goal, there's only really Killip at the moment. Cooper's been recalled. It looks like he's going to be number 2 with all the rumours of Blackburn recalling, Middlesbrough recalling Roberts. We talked about the defence. Lopata has to start. If fit. Go on, Phil. You give the French number 6 because you do that so eloquently on iFollow.
Mile de Juvigny.
De Juvigny. Oh, I say. It's like a fine wine, that, isn't it? De Juvigny.
Carlo always calls in the French number 6. If in doubt, just say Mile. That's his name.
Mile. Yeah, Mile has to start by Miles because he's who partners him. Because when we talked about injuries, Shepherd, started. People who were buying non-league. He came in and he looked. Is it going to be? Should he start? Are you looking McCart? Who's going to make up the final 3 in that back 3?
I thought Shepherd did well in the season. Like it came in at Wigan, didn't he? That way win at Wigan, and he looked superb. And he kind of disappeared after a couple of games. And I know he came back recently and looked a bit rusty because he'd been out. But I'd stick him in, big lad, big strong lad. I'd play them 3 as centre halves.
The other advantage with Shepherd is he's very left-sided, and it's handy to have a left-sided centre-back in there.
Yeah. The midfield is that's it, isn't it? Who Luca Connell start? Or are we saying, actually, who starts? Who makes up that midfield? Come on, boys, do me proud.
Well, Luca Connell's the only one, really, that, for me, deserves a start.
Right.
I'm not even going to say he's 100% fit because I don't think he will be yet. He's not had enough game time. But for me, he would definitely start on Saturday. And then, God, perm anyone from 4 or 5, you take your pick. Because, like I said earlier on, at minute, you've got players that you've got your likes of sort of Theo Chapman, Younger Nathan, that when they do play, at least you get a performance, at least you get commitment. and people will say, "Oh no, Kane's a good player, Styles is a good player," blah blah blah. But if they're not prepared to work, and they're just going to run about, I mean, like Phil said about Styles second half on Tuesday. Wow, he's not going to get a move in January. Nobody's going to look at him and think, I'm going to pay 10 bob for him at minute, because he's not. There's nothing there. There's not even the commitment or the drive to go and win a ball, to go and there's just a lack of passion. So for me, I'd love to see him get one or two of these youngsters. At least you're going to see some passion. At least you're going to see a bit of sweat on shirt. Call it what you want. At minute, we've got your shit on shorts, haven't we? Sorry.
Had to come to it. Cadden is it has to be Cadden, doesn't it?
I'd play Cadden further up because he never gets back to defend anyway. So
Cadden left midfield.
Yeah, that threat that he poses, I do like him when he's going forward, and he does put a good ball in, and he is a goal threat. But he just doesn't get. He's like 3 weeks behind when he gets back. We've pulled a number of goals out where the opposition scored and he's still trotting back. So I just play him further up and go where you can influence the game is going forward. You do it and let somebody else do the defensive side of things.
Well, do you play 4-4-2 then instead of playing 5 at back? Do you play a back 4?
I think he should be a left
winger. As a left-hand side midfielder.
Yeah, play him a left winger or whatever you want to call it, where he can influence the game and can hurt Reading.
And Cotter on the other side then, because O'Keefe is still. Steve spoke maybe not so highly of him earlier. I mean, he's not really had regular starts, has he, to show what he can do? But I suppose it's all about grabbing the opportunity.
He's jumped between both, hasn't he? It's either being Cotter or it's O'Keefe, or one will start and the other one will come on.
Or do you put Williams in there on that right hand side?
Well, if you're gonna insist on playing Shepherd, De Gevinier, and I like that De Gevinier,
nice.
and Lopata, I suppose Williams would go back to that right wing back role.
He looked good last season under Duff when he was pushed up.
Phillips looked good last season. Kane looked good last. It's gone, man. For me, I'd love to see him. Let's start from basics again and play a 4-4-2. You could play Cotter as a right winger, but you could play McAtee as a right winger, because at minute there's only really McAtee that's showing, and we've not really touched on him tonight. McAtee actually looks as though he's a player who wants to go for ball. He wants to win ball. Sometimes he's a bit rash and he dives in sometimes and you think, oh, that would have been close. If he'd have caught him, it'd have been a red card. Phil knows what I'm talking about. But at least he's a player that's prepared to put hard miles in, and he really does propel him, for me. So for me, I would play him. But I won't play him as a forward. Because I don't think
play him just behind the front two. Just behind the front two.
Phil, can you come on again, mate? Because Carlo, you're sacked. Get on. Because I like a man who talks sense, and this lad talks sense, I'm telling you.
Play him in Phillips' role.
What can I say? I'm not even going to ask who's
you
going
just
to
like Phillips.
Up front, though, for me, Cosgrove's got to start. Yeah. He's struggled, we know, but we know he's got the experience. He's been there, done that last season with Plymouth, scored plenty of goals. They wanted him back. We got him, and he struggled a bit with a couple of niggling injuries. Not sure if you're aware, but he has done. But he's getting back to full fitness now. And for me, he's got to start.
Yeah. It's like you say, it's service, though, isn't it, Phil? He's not getting. He's certainly getting nothing through middle, not to his feet or that he can turn on. Everything's boom, boom, boom up at top.
No, but if he starts, if he starts alongside Cole, he starts alongside Cole with McAtee just behind him. That's where I can see the provision coming from.
Yeah,
McAtee is more of a creator than a goal scorer for me.
Yeah, and I think if you do that, you give the defence something really to think about. Because when it's Cole on his own, two people around him, you can play all the high balls you want, but he's not going to get to it, is he? So you need to give him.
That's so it should think about it then. That's so it's your team out. So that's your 4-3-3, isn't it? So you've got Connell holding it middle of midfield. You've got Cadden and Cotter, if you went as your two wingers as such. McAtee, Cosgrove and Cole. Yeah. Oh, it's easy, this job.
And drop some of your non-performing problem children.
But then something needs to be done because it only
cheeky
takes
nut,
one or two bad apples. Kane is obviously now a bad apple. He must be. Look at his interview. Look at the way he carries himself. Styles cannot be much better. Not prepared to put anything in. Phillips for me is the one, and I'm sure he's a nice bloke and he loves his mum and all that sort of thing. But when he crosses that white line, he's shown nothing this season. And he had a good season and he was hitting some cracking goals. I'm not being funny. Couldn't hit a cow's ass with a banjo at minute. Some of his passing and what have you. It's shocking. Carlo can do better. Yeah. I've seen Carlo do better.
No. You're going too far now. You're going too far now. That was an own goal, remember?
Well, I didn't like to say that, did I?
So
yeah, it's a strange one with Phillips, though, isn't it? I mean, it was impressive last season. This season, it's obviously totally out of form. He's lost the plot completely. But is it fair to keep playing him? For me, it isn't. Let him, let him get his mojo back, if you like. But it's just going to get worse and worse. His confidence is visibly going downhill.
Yeah. So,
Steve has been saying he's taking the shirt up. Somebody like a Jallo or anybody who's chomping at the bit could take a shirt. Yeah. He's so yeah.
Right. Well, for me, Jallo should have come on at half time rather than Waters. Yeah. It was needed, that bit of pace up front. Yeah. And Waters just hasn't got it for me. Yeah. And Pym and Throsgrove up front, they're two alike. You're playing two sort of target type men, rather than have the little guy to feed off them.
Yeah. We're going to win 3-1 away at Reading. Cosgrove is going to score first. I'm just putting it out there. Ian, your thoughts?
We should win.
I reckon we'll sneak a 1-0 win.
1-0.
1-0.
Ian, what do you think?
We should win, because they're in disarray on and off the pitch, but I just think it's going to be 1-1.
Steve, make us laugh.
I don't want a bit voice of doom. I really don't.
But I think we've got a bad record down there as well.
I know we have. And I just look at everything we've talked about and everything we'd like to see happen before Saturday. And I just don't think anything will change for Saturday. I really don't. I think he'll probably go with a very similar 11 to what started on Tuesday. And I just can't see the mentality changing of it last 3 or 4 days unless he plays this podcast to team on coach going down.
Afternoon, morning, lads. Good luck. Just in case.
That's it, just in case, yeah. I need to see that change. I need to see a visible change on the pitch. And I just don't think Board will allow Collins to do it. Because at the end of the day, like we always say about Board being, it's a business. It's run by business people and not football people, which is another reason I think why we have that disconnect with Board, because there's not really any football people on it. I just don't think that Collins has got the autonomy, write that one down as well, to make his own decisions. I think he's still being influenced to a certain extent from behind scenes, because at the end of the day, come January, they want to sell Styles, they want to sell Kane, they want to get as much money for him as they can, because they don't want him at club. I won't want him at club at way that they're carrying on. But the only way they can sell him is if it is a saleable commodity. And at the minute, we haven't got any saleable commodities apart from Connell.
You've heard it here.
Turn it off at 3:15. Are you doing commentary, Phil?
No, not this Saturday.
No, I'm not even listening to it. Absolute rubbish. I'm going to watch Sheffield United just for that laugh.
You've been listening to the Reds Report. If you're travelling down to Reading, safe travels, bring back 3 points. But a huge thanks, as always, to Steve, sponsored by the Go. Well, he's hoping to be sponsored by the Go, but because up to now, he's still paying for his beer. Ian, all the way from the other side.
If anybody wants to come for a drink, I'm going in an hour.
Ian, thank you very much. And special guest. I hope you'll join us back maybe in a couple of weeks, Phil, January, when we've bought some more new players And I know every home match you're there anyway, either Hospital Radio or as I follow. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Let's hope we get those 3 points. And on behalf of Phil, Ian, Steve, and myself, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.